Hey, welcome to QWERTYcast, the bi-weekly podcast about indie games, PC games, and everything in between. Today, I'm hanging out with Dave and Cam to talk about a topic that could very well be a two-parter episode, maybe even three, longevity in video games. So let's get started.
Oh, baby.
Oh, baby, oh.
Here we are.
I know, right? I love that intro music as usual. Feels great.
That's how I feel with some of these games. Here we are once again, playing it again.
On my own or with others? Well, I guess we're going to talk about that a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I just made this analogy up, basically that video games are kind of like clothing. You wear them for fun, you wear them for style, or maybe even to like follow a trend. But in one person's hand, a shirt could last 5 weeks, maybe 5 months. In another person's hand, that shirt could last 5 years. You know, this episode, I think we're going to talk a lot about games that fueled by their communities, games that have been around for years and they're still like kicking. Stuff that we love to come back to, or that people keep telling us to start because it just never died off. And, you know, is it the devs, is it the community, or is it the concept of the game itself that's so enjoyable you literally can't put it down? So one of my first questions I wanted to ask you guys was, are there any games, ideally indie, but otherwise, that you have been playing for 5 years or more, and why?
I'm going to let Cam start here.
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's a couple. One that's actually indie is Terraria.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to get some more people to play it. I know we got Kenny going for a little bit. Then we got onto a 7 Days to Die shtick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah.
Which we will definitely talk about a little more.
So I think certain games, it's like Terraria can stand on its own without mods, obviously. Minecraft too, although there is some good mods in Minecraft. But Terraria has like major overhaul updates. And if you like look at the game, you're like, oh, this kind of looks plain. It's 2D Minecraft. And you'll really annoy people by saying that, trust me. Because it is so much more. There's so much content in Terraria, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I remember you asking me the other episode if like the new Binding of Isaac DLC was going to be too much content for the game. You know, like that is a question that I guess can be asked, is it like can a game have too much?
Oh yeah.
And I think it definitely can for a beginner player. But before we go too much into that, well, what kind of game, maybe for Dave, have you come back to over the years?
I guess if we're gonna go on the indie route, I've got 7 Days to Die that Walker and I like constantly like had an on and off thing with. I've played it with other groups of people as well. Never anything to the degree where we ended up getting into it. And then Path of Exile, which is a game that's old that I keep coming back to, but I don't play it with any consistency to actually say that I like play it due to its longevity. In the non-indie like kind of spectrum, I think I tend to go toward like AAA PvP games. I had like a kick of 2 years where pretty much every day I played Overwatch. I had a kick of years and years of my life where every day I played Halo 2. And
totally.
Same thing with Diablo 2. Was like that being the only one that's not a multiplayer shooter of the three games that I like consistently went back to for years and years on end.
Yeah, I think like my high school experience was like, I can just look at the hours I've played on Team Fortress 2. It's over 350 hours. That was all in high school.
That is a lot of hours.
It's a lot of hours, yeah.
It is kind of crazy that, you know, before indie games really came out, that, you know, longevity only belonged to AAA games because they were the ones that were creating a fully finished game that came out on release that you could probably play for years. Like something like Animal Crossing.
I would almost argue it belonged to like PvP in general. Like a good PvP game would just last forever. Because people still play Team Fortress 2.
I think that
people still play Mass Effect 3.
Yeah. I think that the longevity thing definitely has been controlled by multiplayer a lot more than it was by single player. I think you've seen more games. I think there are games that I'll come back to that are indie that will hold that longevity. You see games that have won awards now. We're talking like Hades is a single player game that I think has a lot of longevity. It's not old enough for me to have given it as an answer for that question, but I think it's a game that in 5 years, it's totally feasible that there'll still be a pretty active and involved community around a game like that, if not that game specifically.
So since we're kind of already touching base on it, let's dig a little deeper into what gives a game longevity. So let's say, for example, Hades. That game has what feels like an infinite amount of voice lines that if you're playing it, you just keep getting new stuff that the characters will say. That is obviously, that is allowed by the devs because they can pay their voice actors to talk for a while. But other than content, like aesthetic content, voice acting content, what other things keeps us coming back to a game? For example, I think that it is all about that core game loop. In a single player game, at least, that core game loop of just redoing the same thing over and over again, even though they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But you actually do get a different result with these loops, like roguelikes and whatnot. So what keeps a game going?
I think the overall concept of game loop isn't exclusive to a single player game. I think that's exactly what makes multiplayer games have that longevity, is like really quick to veer into AAA. Playing Halo, it was always like, you go into a game, you win that game, you get out of the game, you trash talk a bunch of 12-year-olds on Xbox Live, and then you go into another game again. And it's just that constant loop of like, how can we improve on what we just did? Like, we played this map, we're going to play this map again. How can we get a bomb armed faster? How can we capture a flag faster? How can we suppress the enemies better? And then in single player, or if you go onto the end of like a game like Path of Exile, right? It's all about incremental and asynchronous improvement, I think, is what makes a really good game loop. So you'll have, for example, like, oh, I just leveled up, so I want to keep going to see how this level up has improved my game. But then it'll be like in the middle of your level up, you'll be like, oh shit, I just found a new skill gem, or oh, I just found new equipment. Now I need to see how this affects my game. And that's where you end up going into that asynchronous loop that keeps people grinding on a game over and over.
Kind of like a reward system.
Yeah.
For continuously playing.
What do you mean?
Well, I know like League of Legends is like an addiction for a lot of people, including myself.
Well, League of Legends is the most watched video game on Twitch right now. Apparently, in this last 7 days, it had 253,000 viewers, and that is a 5.9% drop off from the last 7 days before that.
Well,
so, you're not alone.
Amazingly popular.
These are like viewers, not Fortnite
just players.
And Minecraft right up there too.
Yeah, I mean they set themselves up.
I was thinking of Minecraft.
Fortnite, well,
discuss.
Indie game. We've kind of said we've discussed that League of Legends is indie, right?
I wouldn't say anymore, to be honest.
Okay,
they've been owned by Tencent for years.
Is Escape from Tarkov indie?
I feel like I think we landed on that counting as AA, but I think it technically is indie. I'm not certain.
Seeing what's the first indie game to show up here, it's probably Among Us. Which, so rewards in games, like some kind of reward that makes you keep coming back. You mean like a reward like that keeps developing stuff that you don't know that you can get, that you're just like, whoa, this is cool. I didn't realize this was a gift for playing.
No, I mean, just look at
stuff that you're aiming for.
Just look at pretty much any first-person shooter made today. There's going to be loot boxes, and that triggers your gambling instinct. That's why people want back when they buy it, and that's why pretty much everywhere now, at least in Europe, they have to have percentages of what's possible to earn in loot boxes because it is gambling.
Oh,
but that like
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That like feeling of when you get something good and just like, wow, good guy. Look at this rare skin that like a million people have, but now you have it too. Otherwise, it would cost you $20. Like League gives you free skin shards occasionally to do that.
Yeah,
and
Overwatch always did a good job of introducing new skins.
Yep, I actually liked how Overwatch did loot boxes compared to like PUBG. I don't know if you ever when they introduced it was so bad.
Well, they introduced it with hey, you could earn loot boxes, but then you have to buy the keys to open the loot boxes. So these loot boxes are literally worthless unless you pay us.
Oh my god.
Yep. Yeah, I hated that they did that.
That was such an obvious cash grab. Like many of their attempts at innovation were just obvious cash grabs.
I think game developers now realized the better path is free loot boxes with like very little outcomes, but eventually people pay more, or like a season pass approach where you earn free things, but they make so much money on it. And it's just because like it's addicting to earn stuff for your time. You feel like you accomplished something even though you're not doing anything.
So I think huge push, sorry to interrupt, I think just like one thing I've been noticing a lot more in video games is that there is the longevity almost comes from aesthetic and customization of character and customization of like look and, you know, texture of the thing that you're playing, the thing that represents you, you know? Right. And although a lot of times that part does cost money, you could actually like pay with it, you know, pay real money for skins and for clothes or whatever in like Fortnite. That is definitely something that keeps people coming back. Let's say, for example, although I know we all probably are not going to really keep playing it, Fall Guys every single season comes out with new skins, and they try to keep people interested not only with what they're providing but what you can put in. Like
they also have like timed events too. That's like a big
exactly.
I just feel that though they are missing like some sort of key element to like capture that longevity. I think that game was, and I'm pretty sure we've discussed this before. I think Kenny might have mentioned that like that game was like built to capture your attention for a short amount of time.
Right. And I mean, for me, it was kind of impressive that it felt like I was playing with 60 other people every game. And it wasn't that 60 other people were in the room. It was that we were all competing against each other. And I don't know if I know another game that does that so directly.
I don't think that I cared. I think that like more so I looked at those other people as like additional hurdles and obstacles. Yep. I just looked at them as like, I want to get from point A to point B. Yeah. And there's all these dumb shits in my way.
I love that it was real people. Like it's real people. And a lot of times like it could be 4 people all hanging out together. And that's like a whole line that is like, that's what we were doing a lot of the time. You know, we were all playing together.
It was a lot better played with friends. Yeah,
absolutely. And like so many times, you know, you wouldn't continue to the next stage unless everyone got past the first stage. That was the QWERTYcast rule for Fall Guys.
Right. And I think a lot of people had that rule, but at the same time that kind of detracted from the core gameplay of the game itself, which is that like, oh, like 28 people succeeded, and like of that 28 there's like 2 or 3 groups of 3 to 4 people where one person didn't get in and just everyone drops, and you're like 28 people succeeded, next round starting with 13 people, and you're like, what the hell just happened?
That's a good point. I never actually thought about that being the reason we lose people, is because they leave in groups. That's so funny.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say really quick before we get too off topic of that is we're off topic of what we were discussing, which was the rewards. I feel like that's something that, and I don't feel like it, I know that that's something that studios took a key took that from mobile and Facebook games, which did actually really play into that whale kind of mentality of like, we don't need to capture everybody's money, we just need to capture like 12 people's money, and
they're willing to spend give thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Holy shit, you're right.
And I don't love that's the problem that everyone started to take toward loot boxes and stuff. Is it revealed this predatory side of the industry that like we overlooked inside of like mobile games because they're free to play. But once you got to that part of like, oh, so you're charging money for something that should just be an in-game reward or should have just been unlocked from the start, and you're also attaching a $60 to $70 price tag to this game.
Right.
That's kind of fucked. And I think that's where that I think that's where we saw that shift off of like what PUBG did. They really highlighted the issues with the loot box stuff by just going so hard into like, nope, pay us money or like that's it. EA did the same thing with Battlefront or Battlefront 2. I can't remember which one, where it was like, no, you can unlock everything. Just play like 1,000 hours or give us $5.
Yeah. They're definitely, we're testing the boundaries.
I kind of saw that with like, what's it called? What was that game? Genshin Impact. That game is a gatcha game, basically, where you're just doing Breath of the Wild style, like world exploring, dungeon crawling, and the characters you get like a core 4 or 5, but after that, every character you get is a gamble, or unless you grind the story. And so you could get a story character that comes in way down the line, super early on, by just using wishes, and you can grind like a mother for wishes and all of the gems that allow you to make those wishes, but it's a lot easier to just buy them. And the grind is really hard though, like unless you're, I don't know, I tried getting far into it and then I had to swap from one console to the other, so I lost the momentum on that game. But that game at least had like probably 20 to 30 hours of gameplay before they really kind of incentivized you to pay them money. But it was free, you know? And that is an indie game. Like, there's no black and white for sure. There's always going to be an example of a game that's doing it a little bit differently. But I think what we're getting at though is like pay to play is definitely infamous in the industry right now. Pay to play is something everyone hates. And we like no real like indie game devs don't really go into a game expecting to go into the pay to play market, but maybe they are these days because you know you can make money. That's how you just keep playing. Especially if it's 99 cents at a time.
So go ahead.
I was to say, just to get us back on topic, to what we were originally saying, if I don't mention this, Kenny's gonna hate me. I know what he'd say is Faster Than Light is a game that, to him, he always comes back to. I think that is because of, like you mentioned before, like Hades is probably going to be one of those games down the line people will keep playing. I think it's because it's a roguelike. It just has that core gameplay loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so here's where I'm not sure to divert is, do we keep talking about single player or do we talk about multiplayer? Because those are such different beasts.
So really quick.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw in that to answer your question a little bit further. Something that like provides longevity in games for me is the more immersive I find the game, the more I'm normally willing to come back to it. I wanted to cite an example of Shenmue actually, because we were talking about the gatcha games, and in that game, one of the like weird types of things that you could just do, much like in Persona games, how like it relies so heavily on your day-to-day interactions of mundane things. One of the things that you could do in Shenmue was was go into those like little 25-cent machines, and like it's a collector's item, you know, but you're like collecting it in game, and you can just like stand in front of one of them like for several minutes, just putting in like a yen, twisting it around, getting a new little figurine, and you're like, oh yeah, I like my digital character that I'm role playing as has gotten a new collector's item. Well, see, look, like he can play pinball, you know, like it gives you almost like that sensibility of like you're playing a living, breathing person, like and this is like what they do in their spare time is go to the arcade and like, you know, play a fucking boxing game and try to get the high score. stuff like that.
Okay, new question then. Can you think of games that have mini games in them that are as much fun to play as the game itself?
Witcher
Catherine.
3.
Catherine? Wait, what was... Okay, Dave first. Catherine, what was the mini game?
Catherine, the minigame, was a different take on the core gameplay. So in Catherine, you are a dude who is having these nightmares where you're basically being attacked by monsters. You have to climb up to the top of the tower before before the night's over, or you die in real life, essentially. Sorry for the spoilers on this old ass game. But then at night before you go home and go to sleep, you are in a bar with your friends and you're like texting, like, so you can choose like a few different dialogue options. The art style is just incredible in this game.
Yeah.
Atlas, of course.
Oh, God.
And but there's an arcade machine that you can go over to. And okay, so you'll see the core gameplay here is that. And then in the arcade machine, it's that same gameplay, but you're limited on how many blocks you can move. So the core gameplay, you can move as many blocks as you need to.
I have heard about this. Catherine's mini game, the block climbing thing, has I remember reading about how this has its own like life in itself.
Yes.
That there is like a community of people who play the mini game in Catherine competitively because there are ways to be tricky about it and to have strategy. And whether or not like there was that much intended, I mean, I doubt it had the intention of living on more than the game itself, but I did watch like a mini doc about
so worth it.
Yeah. Oh God.
Like, what a game that I can't recommend enough. Like, I love that game. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, Cam, did you have an example?
An answer.
Oh yeah, I mean, you ever play Gwent?
No. What's Gwent?
It's a card game in Witcher 3.
Oh, gotcha. I now know
wow.
the game that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just
But
like a little strategy. It's a little strategy game,
battles.
and you just like in the game Witcher, you can go around collecting Gwent cards and just play people in Gwent, and it's like was so popular that they actually made a mobile game for it and its own game for Gwent.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. There'll be jokes about people playing that game more than the actual core gameplay of Witcher.
I mean, like I know that there's probably a lot more people playing poker in Red Dead Redemption 2 than there are people playing the core game now. Like maybe not more people, but there are a lot of people playing poker in Red Dead Redemption 2.
It's a good poker sim.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I would love to see that more in indie games for sure. I know that like obviously most of the time is spent on the core game and not a mini game inside of it, but that is definitely something that keeps us coming back to games too, is like maybe there's just one section of that game that is just really fun to replay. I'm trying to think of another example, but
have you what games do you keep coming back to, Andres?
Yeah, I guess you haven't really answered the question too much.
I know, right?
The questions you've been asking.
It's like there's none. I hate them all.
Yeah, I fucking hate games. I think that originally I would come back to a lot of single player games. And now because of QWERTYcast and because of like the gaming community we've sort of built, it's a lot easier for me to play multiplayer games, online games. So my library is really much more single player, except for, let's say, Duck Game. Duck Game is definitely a game that I have come back to every single year since I started playing it, mostly because of the silliness of it. So that's something I'm attracted to. I could care less about realistic looking video games. I could care less about how like detailed a tree is, or how like how detailed my survival sim is in terms of I need to drink and eat and all that stuff. I 100% am so much more interested in silly, funny, creative like elements of a game. For example, Duck Game has quacking. That's a button. That's hilarious. Duck Game has like a whole bunch of guns, and they all reference other video games sometimes. Like, what's that one? I'm trying to think of a gun in Duck Game now that references another video game. I think the gun... Yeah, there's that one gun that shoots a very slow bullet that will fry you. That is a reference to Aqua Teen Hunger Force and the Moonanites, which I remember somebody bringing up during our stream. And let's go to another game. So Enter the Gungeon. I made that mistake last time.
I was about to
Enter the
that,
Gungeon.
Like, you like gun references.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about that.
He's just a violent boy about violent games.
Gun references are hilarious because they can just, like, there's only so many ways you can make a gun until you want to be creative about it. So when you have game,
you have the baseball bat called guns. Blasphemy in a gun game.
Right, and it's like it will reflect bullets, and then there's like the bullet character has a baseball that also shoots or something, right? Not jumping on that too much, but references to other video games are something that I really love seeing. I think the core loop of Gungeon by yourself is a lot of fun because it feels like there's always a lot happening and you have to pay attention to every enemy on the screen that you're trying to like snipe out and then just keep moving really fast. So it feels like you're pushing through really quickly, and the better you get, the less time you spend on those early levels. So you get that sense of progression. Like, yes, I keep looping, but at the same time, I'm spending half as much time on level 1.
Which is such a difference between the multiplayer aspect of Duck Game, which very much requires a group of people to play with. I know that I would play Ultimate Chicken Horse quite a hell of a lot if anyone else would launch it up and play with me.
Ultimate Chicken Horse, I still don't even know.
Do you think that community content is important to you? Because Duck Game has a lot of that as well.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about community.
Like games that have that, like Minecraft, is like the only reason I feel it got so popular is because of streamers and just the community in general, and how like make all these crazy things with it to what it's become today, the behemoth it is.
I think that is really important, is that a game, one of the main elements that will help a game continue is going to be open source, like, right? What's the phrase I'm looking for?
I mean,
opening the game,
right?
Yeah, opening the game up to the community to mess around with. For example, Left 4 Dead 2. That game should be dead by now, but it had a huge release that was specifically a level that was created by the modding community. Binding of Isaac.
And it did get us to play it.
Yes, and we did, and I fucking love Left 4 Dead 2.
We
didn't even play. We didn't even play the new level first. We played all of the old ones before we touched the new one.
And I think that the interesting thing is that it didn't change anybody's mind on the game. I'm personally not a big fan of Left 4 Dead. I think it's a really boring gameplay loop. And so when we played, it was just like, okay, and like I kind of slogged through. And, all right,
yeah, that was a couple days of playing
here
with you until you finally admitted you actually don't like the game, and everyone's like, "Why are you playing?"
No, I was pretty open about it. Like,
we never played the competitive version of it.
Oh, with the zombies, like where some people play zombies, some people play humans.
Because that's what me and Kenny got addicted to. We were playing competitive.
Okay.
It's
I would like that
to jump into. Yeah,
it's a whole different world.
Yeah, because then you actually have new moves. You can beat the zombies.
For me, I think the PvE experience itself was just like not enjoyable. It's has a very much like the same thing as like some other games that I used to play occasionally. Like PUBG was one of them where like I played it, but like I always found myself asking like, why am I playing this? I was like, oh, I guess 'cause I've got nothing better to do.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about community, and we're talking about how a game can continue living because of the mods from the community. So is there a game that actually has that as an example to you that you do enjoy?
Pretty much any Bethesda game.
Okay.
For me, I don't do a whole lot of modding.
I'm not talking about you modding.
No, like
I'm talking
I don't.
about you playing a game.
I understand you're not talking about me modding. Fucking dick. I don't play a lot of games with mods on them. I'm not very big into the modding community in general. So when I'm saying I don't do a lot of modding, I mean on my games I don't add a lot of mods onto games. So no, I don't have that. Is what I was trying to say.
You don't use any of those tools with Path of Exile?
No, Path of Exile is a base game for me.
Okay. Cam, you like modded tools?
Yes.
Tell me about it.
It's like a ritual once a year. I'll go back to Skyrim or Fallout 4, depending how I feel. And just mod it for about 2 weeks. I don't even know if I'll play it, but just the experience of modding the game is fun enough for me to finally get it to work.
Wait, well, like that you are modding the game, or you're just adding mods to it for fun?
Just adding mods. Oh, I don't make the mods, no.
Yeah.
I'm not that good. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you can look at content creators, and all they do is review mods, and they still do for Fallout 4 and Skyrim.
Yeah.
I talked to a coworker of mine whose kid, like under 10 years old, plays a lot of Minecraft, and she talks about how he spends a lot more time like watching YouTube videos about the mods and different things that you can do with the game, and that this kid is totally plugged in to the community more than he is like the base game, which I think is really interesting because like kids are starting off with that instead of starting off with like base games and then slowly discovering the community. Or maybe that is really it, but like the communities are so much more prevalent now. I feel like it started with video games having their own websites that had forums, and then it moved over to platforms with forums like Steam, and now we have Discord. Every game can have their own Discord server where you have the whole community there talking about it. You know, let's see, how many games do I even have? But yeah.
So my question, I guess, is like, at what point in time does it become more about like you're just talking about a game than actually ever playing it? Or like in Cam, in your experience, like you enjoy the act of like adding all those different mods onto the game, but then you mentioned like you might not even play it. You just like added a bunch of mods onto it and like just seeing the kind of stuff that you could do, which I understand the experience of. I've tried to do it with Fallout New Vegas before, and like some stuff I was like, oh, this is fun, like this is interesting, but it didn't push me enough to play through the entirety of Fallout New Vegas again. It's a very large game, and it gets even larger when you add like 12 mods to it. And then the same thing goes with Minecraft. Like there's some really cool Minecraft mods that I remember when I was watching a lot of other podcast stuff, and like one of them was like a Pokemon mod, and like they basically like shoehorned Pokemon into Minecraft, and I thought it was really fucking awesome. I didn't have anybody to play it with, so I didn't, but like I don't think that it would have kept me around long enough for me to consider it like a game that I would have revisited every day. But again, I'm not plugged into that community well enough. So I guess for me, like at what point in time does the community actually outlive the game itself, where most people don't even play the game, they just look at stuff about the game?
I think it just depends how you make it, to be honest. For Minecraft, it's just content creators keep it alive. And then let's go, for example, for like Overwatch and League of Legends. Overwatch pushed so hard to get into esports because it knows that if it did, it might not get players to play the game, but it'll get people to watch the game at least. Yeah. And that's also a source of revenue. League of Legends, like Riot Games, and they like basically them and like Counter-Strike like forefronted it. I mean, you know, I wouldn't say Counter-Strike did. I would say League of Legends really like went big for the huge venues and concerts and just like over the top production, and it kind of set the stage for it. Because I remember, like, I think I barely ever watched professional Counter-Strike back in the day, but it wasn't really until, in my opinion, I'm probably wrong here again, it wasn't really until like Riot Games took it and like made so much money from it that these people were just like, oh, we can do better and do more. I mean, like Valve, like it's like they have like the biggest grand prize ever. It's like a couple $1 million, and that's all funded by the community. You can like pay to do the thing, and then if they win the Dota 2 tournament, then they get this prize pool. Like, but that alone, like, I was gonna say, like, I don't play
go
Dota.
ahead.
Yeah, it's like I don't play Dota 2 at all, but
Right.
I like contributed to the prize pool and watched it. And like
Yeah.
they basically got me there. They made money and got what they wanted.
Yeah, it's almost like they combined the idea behind a concert and the idea behind like the World Series of poker. Where like the people entering pay to get into the tournament, but then like the people viewing are also paying just to watch it. It's
Right.
like a very interesting like double dipping strategy that just worked out for them.
Rocket League is kind of there too, right? Like they are
Yep.
pretty much, they are an esport now. And
Yeah.
after, selfless plug, the fact that we're doing a league right now for a month or two on Rocket League on our Twitch, it's showing me more and more how people treat it like a sport, even though there's hilarious skins and there's flying. But it's still a sport. The way that we're communicating with each other, with our teammates, each team is different, but it is a lot of like, all right, I'm going up, you stay back, okay, follow up, cut, and like terminology and interactions that are very like unique to each group, but it's still being treated like a sport. And I think that's very unique. I don't love sports that much, but I just love seeing how this game has developed into something so big, something so communal. And it's still incredibly popular, and it came out in 2015. But yeah, Rocket League is definitely, I think it's up there in the top 20 of games that are viewed on Twitch. 20 or 30. Yeah, it's 21. So, we'll get views by default, I think. That's the thing. So I guess, you first.
The main things we've kind of landed on are longevity in games, influenced significantly by a core gameplay loop that can keep people engaged in what they're doing, but also, at least in terms of a multiplayer game, especially more so, I think, than a single-player game, it manages to be more about the community around the game. There are notable exceptions, like how Cam mentioned Skyrim. Skyrim being a single-player game, the modding community is really what keeps that game alive. Whereas a game like League of Legends, the community definitely keeps it alive, but like the core gameplay loop of MOBAs is just very much it is that like almost comparable to like the multiplayer version of a roguelike, where you have like your overarching stuff that you unlock all the time, i.e. new characters that you can permanently unlock, and then each game that you go into, you start from like a relative ground level of you have no skills, you're playing, killing mobs, killing other players so that you can get the experience to level up inside of the game itself. So like that core gameplay loop and community seem to be the two biggest things impacting longevity of a game. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think in terms of multiplayer, like, you're hitting it on the head. As we've discussed, it's just how do you allow people to adjust that game for their own play style, or play style with a team. So
I think games that can approach it that way are in a much stronger position. But I think it's really difficult to make a game where you can reward players for playing a bunch of different styles. I think of games like Team Fortress 2 or Overwatch, which is inspired heavily by it, where you've got people who don't necessarily, myself, I'm terrible at shooters. I don't necessarily care about killing a bunch of people. I'd much rather like be protected and heal somebody while they do some killing.
So then what causes a game to just, what's the easiest way for a game to kind of just die, and what could bring it back?
For me, the easiest way for a game to die is for it to be flat, for it to just rely on like one gimmick or like just one note to keep it alive. When you don't have multiple areas engaging the user, I think that's where a game falls short for me. I think I can probably like rummage up a couple of examples of that. For me though, like games that model themselves after Diablo, one being Wolcen, like they keep trying to revitalize themselves, but they started on such a bad foot of like, we had an idea and we went with it and it like didn't land. So we're going to like lean really heavily into the idea and keep trying to revive it. And every time an update comes out, the majority of reviews are like, they added this thing that like they added more content, but they didn't fix the core gameplay. So like, it's still not fun.
For me, it's like, well, I'm wondering what made No Man's Sky come back.
No Man's Sky, I think, was a commitment to the promise that was made for the original game, and I think a lot of people gave it the opportunity to actually be the game that was originally marketed to them.
Yeah, I think they're kind of lucky.
Yeah,
to be honest,
they definitely are. I don't see a lot of games that come back from that bad of a reception.
I personally like what I didn't get was like a game like Destiny 2. How did that revive itself when like they took the same strategy as Destiny 1? They were like, let's release a game that doesn't have everything that we want in it, and then later on we're going to charge people a bunch of money for something that we promised them that they would have had initially.
Yeah,
and people just ate it up twice in a row. What a miracle.
The same thing's happening with Cyberpunk, and the same thing happened with Witcher 3. That game came out with not a complete game, bad reception, and they eventually redeemed themselves. And now Witcher 3 is like one of the best games of all time. But if you go back, it had a bad reception. It had a bad release.
But how much extra content did they like charge for? I don't know, because I never really actually got into The Witcher 3. I know like that was a big thing for No Man's Sky. No one would have given that not no one, but like significantly less people would have given that game a second chance if they were like, hey, we fixed the game and it's another $45 for you to play what we actually wanted you to buy. And like, so I think that free content update, that's what like boggles my mind about Destiny is like the first Destiny. It was like, okay, we can forgive you. Like, we'll give you a little bit of extra money because like, you know, you put a lot of extra development time into making this expansion that like fixes all the stuff. And then in Destiny 2, it was like, we forgot what we did in Destiny 1. We're just like starting from scratch again. And like, and everyone, it's as if the entire community also forgot what Bungie did with Destiny 1, which made Destiny 2 to me seem like such an obvious cash grab move of like, tricked you again. Like, just give us another $40 for this expansion. And that's the actual game that we told you that you were going to get on launch. And people fucking ate it up. And I personally refuse. I'm still very bitter about the Destiny 2 release, and then selling a season pass that was called the expansion pass, which said that it would include all expansions, and then afterward renaming it to the season pass, which then did not include all of the expansions, just the first season of expansions.
Well, they gotcha.
They did.
Yeah.
I played the game.
Yeah, but I didn't buy the expansion, so they
there you go.
really
They didn't get you.
yeah, they fumbled for me, but I guess overall the community, to my knowledge, is still fairly going strong and feel as though they've been fan serviced, even though they've been like bled dry to get that content.
I think two genres that are really important to like allowing longevity, mostly because they allow the players to keep the game going more than the community or like the devs themselves, are farming sims and survival games. We're definitely going to talk a little bit more about survival games because that's something that's really taken our server over. But starting with farming sims, I think that is a kind of structure that even if you didn't really release that much content over time, people could still come back and keep trying new things. Stardew Valley, for example. That game, when did it even come out? But that game is still incredibly popular. And only costs $15 for the base game. Let's see, by... Okay, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. But Stardew Valley is, you know, you have not only farming, you also have like some dungeon crawling, monster fighting, and you have the relationship sim of it all. But
what are you not going to try to pronounce? Concerned Ape?
Thank you. Is that... I couldn't read it well. Oh, I see. The R and the N were kind of blending for me.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
Yeah, Concerned Ape was the developer and publisher. is the developer and publisher of Stardew Valley.
Right. And that game, if you watch people play who have been playing for a while, their farms look incredible. They have, like they have the animals, like pigs and cows and chickens and all this shit. They have their own little lakes and patches for each different type of food. And I don't know. There's so much complexity in that game because you can, I think, customize a lot of stuff. And also, once your farm looks diverse, it really looks like colorful. It looks like something you could be like proud of looking at every day when you wake up. We all, well, not we all, but like a lot of us got into Animal Crossing during that huge rush in April when quarantine first hit. And I still know people who are playing it today. Months later, they're really into the game. They're really into like continuing to try new things, and the small updates that feel kind of small still do give people new things to try, like the Dream Islands. Apparently that's like a cloud save sort of deal that you can also share with other people, and every new season brings in new like elements to collect, even though it's not really changing too much how you're building your island. So
I love that there's a group of people that can enjoy those games.
Yeah.
I wish that I was a person that could continue to go back to a game like that and actually
like a farming
relax
sim
while playing a video game.
Yeah, the stress for me is that if I wanted to try something new, I'd have to scrap the old. And then that would also scrap my progress, like the things that make the game easier to play. Yeah. So
that's something I actually like doing. So
scrapping?
Just scrap, start over. Because I did it with like No More Oxygen, and I do it all the time with the RimWorld. You just
Oxygen
find like
not included?
Yeah, no more oxygen.
No more oxygen.
Which, just to like, I could spend another 15 minutes on Klei Entertainment or Klei Studios all by itself. Klei, I think it is. Oxygen not included. Klei, yeah. Klei Entertainment. They, with Oxygen not included, if you watch, there's like a mini documentary, I think from NoClip, that talks with the CEO, and he says that he feels very proud that he kind of tricked players into learning with his video game, because you are learning infrastructure. If you were a plumber, you could use like your actual common sense to create proper plumbing in your base. And same with electricity, and then it moves on to automation, and then like the newest update is actually building rockets. Just everything that do with like your fuel, your electricity, your plumbing, everything's very rooted in reality, in how gravity works and the physics of it all, and like pressure. But it's a goofy game. It's like a cartoon game. There's like alien creatures and all that stuff. And so it's like a mix of both. People just peeing. That was my word. I would have stopped playing that game a while ago if it wasn't for playing with other people, even though we weren't playing on the same planet together. But I just everyone kept drowning in their own pee and dying from gross germs.
Like locking somebody else behind a door that you ended up like doing something with that could then no longer be opened, and the other person starves.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, don't even get us started on Don't Starve and Don't Starve Together, which is also by Klei Entertainment. Those games are still incredibly popular, and Klei recently, I think, joined up with another company that was going to give them better technology for the development of their games. I can't remember.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Tencent acquires majority stake.
These people are everywhere.
Don't Starve. Really? What do you mean?
That's so Cam was just mentioning how Riot has that majority ownership by Tencent. Tencent gave Blizzard a bunch of money for Diablo Immortal, I believe. Tencent, I think, is how Bungie got out of their deal with Activision Blizzard with Destiny.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. They are big money from China.
I incorrectly referenced Tencent when I should have been talking about NetEase. I'm sorry for the mistake, and I would love to say that it wouldn't happen again, but it definitely will. Thanks for listening.
Big money. So, let's, I guess, wrap up what we've sort of discussed, right? You did a little bit of that, but in terms of what gives a game longevity, we know that a lot of times it is the community. It's also the core game loop, like we mentioned, and it is what you can do with it, even if it's not a loop, like where Stardew isn't a loop, it's just a continuous game. What are the things that you can do to customize the world you have?
Yeah, and then for me, immersion, how closely you can connect with a game and the character that you're playing, whether it's a character that you create or a character that's given to you, like in Hades.
Yeah, and I think we are definitely leading. As an adult who plays video games, I am becoming more and more attracted to games that I can spend a long time on. Not necessarily 8-hour playthroughs every night, but a game that I can come back to for an hour and then drop off and then come back to and play for years.
Right. Longer play time, shorter play sessions.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and welcome back. We are going to jump straight into another section in this episode. It's going to be a pretty casual review of the game 7 Days to Die by the Fun Pimps, and also a little bit of a review of survival games in general, since we're talking about longevity in video games. 7 Days to Die is an open world game that is a unique combination of first-person shooter, survival horror, tower defense, and role-playing games. Play the definitive zombie survival sandbox RPG that came first, and Nava's game awaits, which is the main world seed that they developed for the game. When you start the game, there are maybe 3 sizes of worlds, and then you jump in and you host your own server, and you can have up to 8 to 16 people play in your server with you. These games and worlds are massive, especially if you try loading a world seed that was created by the modding community, or at least like the devs over time. There are lists of some of the best world seeds out there, but the game itself is incredibly fun to play with people, and we on QWERTYcast in the Discord server were playing it for hours. There were nights where we were in there until 5 a.m. together, developing the bases, fighting off zombies, and this game gets harder as it goes on. So every 7 days, and this is adjustable, but every 7 days a zombie horde will attack, and it's up to you and your team to develop a strong base that won't get completely destroyed, somewhere you can actually survive out and kill all these zombies.
Or it's up to you and your friends to break off into different teams and not cooperate in any way.
Yeah, exactly. So 7 days to me felt like D&D, where the game itself was the DM. And maybe it's just because I hadn't really played too many survival RPGs, but we were all invested in our own line of information and knowledge. Let's say, for example, Max, he was learning how to be an engineer. He was making all of our auto turrets, our guns, and our gyrocopters, and learning through that skill tree. Kyle was our miner. Miner 69er was the skill that he was pumping up, and he just got to a point where with a sledgehammer, he could basically knock out like a whole column in the ground really quickly. And I was being our chef, which Dave initially wanted to be, but couldn't jump on at first, and I saw how much fun I get why you want to be the chef. It's really fun to feel accomplishing when you start punching crops and you get 3 out of them instead of 1.
Also,
and you're
I
able
wanted to be in charge of my own hunger and thirst.
Hunger and thirst.
I wanted to be in charge of my own hunger and thirst because I didn't want to rely on someone else cooking and making drinks for me, because then I would inevitably go longer without food.
Yeah, and what was nice was that at the point that we had gotten in the game, since we played for I think a straight week, or maybe even more, we had gotten to a point where I had actually I was set with food. That I was at a point as the chef that we would not go hungry again. We were harvesting enough corn and meat and potatoes in order to really make any large dish that would feed you with 50 food or more. which was
stew
really
again.
nice. Yeah, and I mean and I did like that there was a bunch of different recipes you could try. It wasn't just like 3; it was at least like 10 different stuff, and they all had like, some were better for digestion. I didn't have to worry about keeping myself hungry or thirsty either because I was the chef. You're right, but there was a point where it felt like our skills would plateau, where we wouldn't have to worry about like just surviving each day, and we could start worrying about surviving for each 7 days. Like the
You didn't have to
hordes
worry
were
about
still
surviving.
really tough, but
You more had to worry about thriving.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I think there is definitely a lot of elements in that game that can be just really fun to keep playing for a while, like decorating your base, building interesting looking bases that are based off of real buildings. I would see, let's say, for example, there was a whole YouTube channel of a guy that would renovate homes in 7 Days to Die. He started off with a game specifically made for renovating homes as like the game concept, and then he jumped into 7 Days because it's more fun. Because you still, even after you renovate the house, you can set a bunch of zombies on it to just destroy it. But
Yeah.
that was another element that was becoming a lot more fun, was like developing the base, working on the aesthetic of everything, especially your outfits. So I don't talk that much. What did you guys like about it? Because you guys were playing with me and with the group for a while.
Cam, would you like to jump in? I sat out on a lot of sessions that you guys played on. So
Well, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I mainly just soloed it myself because I also, like you said, I didn't want to depend on someone cooking food for me because then I'd starve, and that's super annoying.
Yeah.
To be starving. So I would just kind of eat food and do my own thing and thrive on my own. I also liked developing horde shelters and seeing what would be the best way. Unfortunately, we didn't get to a point where like my current design was like not going to work because I knew it wouldn't eventually because there was no ranged attacks yet. But yeah, I'm sad it died
Yeah.
horribly.
Which we, like, before we talk about why it died on us, Dave, why you actually introduced us to this game, even though you didn't get to play that much with us. I know that you have been playing this game for years. So what?
Yeah.
And you've been pushing it on me you were pushing it on me for weeks before I started.
I pushed it on a lot of people for years because it was always a game that I really believed just had something for everyone. I think that's what I liked the most about it, was like if I wanted to go in and like create a base, I could just go in and base build for a day. Or if I wanted to go in and like just raid a city and like kill a bunch of zombies, I could do that too. And there was nothing stopping me from doing one or the other exclusively. Especially with a large group, you kind of had that freedom of like when I would go in, a lot of times I ended up just like going out on my own and trying to push the expansion of the map because I thought that we had the shittiest base ever, and I really wanted us to set up somewhere that made a lot more sense, like how Cam and Kenny set up theirs. And
You guys,
so
you had bad base.
we did.
I want to talk on that too, because you guys, I understand the criticism, but we were having so much fun. And I think Kyle, Max, and myself, who had never played the game before, were just like so excited about this idea that we were working together to create this base. Like, yes, we started off with an incredibly large base that was so dumb to keep fortified because it was just too many blocks to pay attention to. But
and
that
they were
first-
like the top of the base had like 6 different entry points, which I remember pointing out to you guys. I was like, guys, there's like 6 entry points into this. And you were like, no, there's only the one way to get, or not you, Kyle, I think said. You're like, no, there's only the one way to get down here. I mean, unless you actually go outside and go to this other way to get down here that's not fortified in any way. And I was like, so there's already 2 entry points that you have to worry about just from that. And then what we learned, it's as if we learned it and took nothing away from it. We learned that the zombies will just see that it's easier to break through your ceiling than it is to try to get through those like fortified doors. So we immediately started that next seed, and you guys found a bunker that the zombies could collapse in our ceiling with. And I was like, well, didn't we talk about this already? Was this not like already considered a bad idea?
So yes, that is definitely something that makes it hard, is that everyone has their own opinion on how to play the game, and it's hard to like focus if you don't have a director, you know, if you don't have somebody saying, this is the direction we need to go, this is the best way to build our base. Everyone take your respective jobs and do that. I think that is definitely the next thing we would have led into. So we started off with US post 69 because it just was funny to us, and that was it. That was the joke. But it was too big to manage. Even though, and I don't care what you think, I thought it was really cool. We would drive all the way down this road. Eventually you come to a point where you see all of the oak trees that I've planted, and then you just see the suicide ladder from a distance, because we in the beginning were killing ourselves instead of healing ourselves in order to restart our characters' like health and hunger progress. But you would see a suicide ladder from super far away over a mountain or whatever, and then there's this beautiful base. And it just has towers on each corner, and it has a really shitty garage. And it just felt like something that like you could not build on your own. That was something that was built by 4 people, you know? And that something about that felt really special to me, just because I almost felt proud coming back from a hunt. It felt like I was in a home instead of in a hole. And yes, the most effective way to play that game would probably just to be 5 blocks around you on each side that are incredibly fortified, and you have a bunker, and that's whatever. But like that just
tower.
wasn't as fun.
It
exactly.
tends to be better, but
yeah. So when we moved over to the next seed, which, you know, we immediately started next to the trader, thinking that would be smart, finding out that we couldn't really mess around with our items or the stations that we were building too much because the trader was too close, and it was like causing issues for us to drop like a block that said that was our home. We were so close, I think, to getting to a point where we would have all been on the same page and enjoying that. But
which I think was just an experience thing as well. Like,
yeah,
definitely there's a charm to like getting into a prefab house and like making that work for you as a base defense, and like learning how to improve and how to get better at the defense before you realize like, oh, I should have just made like a base that has a singular access point that's made out of really strong material. And like from that access point, you can expand in the air and do all this other stuff. Or you could even find a way to separate yourself so far in the ground that you can build on the ground, but there's just such a large gap that zombies need to cross that they basically just die before they can get to that base. But you guys always took the approach of like a giant landmass, which was the hardest thing to fortify.
Yeah. And so like, well, not always. It was just the first time, right? So the second time we were trying to, actually, maybe you're right. Yeah, that bunker was
still a large
big.
landmass.
Yeah.
Like really like an 8x8, and then vertical, and then expanding outward from there is probably a more ideal scenario, and probably not even a perfect one.
Another idea I wanted to try was that we would take over a neighborhood, and each of us would maybe get our own house. You know, maybe
which
Walking
I thought was the
Dead
funniest
style.
Bad idea ever.
Yeah,
like, I would have loved to try it because of how bad of an idea it was, but
it's an idea you could do.
Right.
Like, it's something you could actually
could
accomplish. And yes, it would be super hard to fortify every house, but it's possible.
Yeah.
Because like one guy just gets every zombie.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not going to be an even split.
If Kenny were here, he would talk about that time where we were split off into 2 groups of 3 and 4. And, you know, you guys had the horde on the 7th day, and eventually it just disappeared. And our group, which I wasn't even playing that night.
Yeah, we efficiently killed them. That's why.
Exactly. And then what? It was just like Kenny described it as a very poetic silence that, you know, you have the apocalypse around you, this red sky, but not a zombie in sight. Meanwhile, our base that is way too big is being completely demolished.
And overrun in every location by zombies.
Especially
and, it didn't help that you weren't there.
But my character was.
your character was there, which all day long, when you idle in that game, the screamers, which attract miniature hordes, just walk toward, like they spawn near you and they walk towards you to attract hordes so that you get punished with dying. But then even after you died, it didn't stop those screamers from spawning.
Right.
So just all day long, we're going back to the base doing these minor fortifications. We didn't even have time to like prepare for the night. And so that sucked. And then I was there and I was under leveled, which sucked even more for me.
What else sucked about the game? What did you not like?
I think that overall I don't have anything that I particularly like hate about the game. The thing that always sucked for me was that you guys would want to do these like monster sessions, and I would be like, I can get on for like an hour or two, but like I'm not getting on from like 8 p.m. until 5 a.m.
Yeah, that was a weird timing because I was off from work for like 2 weeks and I could stay up until 5. I think a few of us were.
Yeah, and I think that really threw me off because like I would jump into the game and you guys would be like, we did this, and this. And I'm like, you shouldn't have done these 5 things, but it's good that you did these other 3.
Yeah.
And then you'd be like, well, we didn't know, it's been working out for us. And then like I would join in and you guys would be, and that was like the fucking death phrase, right? It's been working out for us. And then like the horde would happen and everything fell apart immediately. And I was like, so that's why I said that you shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, okay, Dave, well then fuck you.
No, because you approach everything with so much anger. And you're just like, this fucking sucks. You guys suck for doing this thing, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. It's like,
no, but then you look at the rival base, and they're just happy and surviving.
Yeah, but I think we were having more fun.
We didn't. We had fun not dying during the horde.
I had fun building.
Just saying.
Well, so I guess the problem for me was I didn't get to experience any of the fun that leads up to the horde night, and then I would get to join in, and you guys would be. I remember the one time I got annoyed because someone wasn't going to be there. And I think it was Kyle wasn't going to be there. And you guys were like, well, so should we like wait for him to get back so that he can experience the horde night? And I was like, it didn't stop you guys from the last 2 horde nights not with me.
I mean, I always asked. Like, I always tried to just have the patience for people because it was a game that everyone needed to be on for, yeah. And easily find FOMO with like, oh, you could play but I couldn't, so... And I feel like in the past, the only reason I really could play that much, like I said, was because I was on vacation. But that getting left behind, I like not. It's not that I want to say I don't envy it, but that fucking sucks, and I can understand why that pissed you off because you hate being left out. You hate not being able to be part of all these great experiences that everyone else is having, and that game can definitely create that. Especially with like, how would you do a 16-player server? I don't even know. Like, not 16 people are going to be free to play every time, and then you would have that happen to probably half of them. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So, Cam, was there stuff that you didn't like? Because you played more God mode than we did.
God mode?
Creative mode, no, whatever.
Creative.
Oh, I mean, I did that one time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It seemed,
just to see something.
It seemed cool that they had that God mode in order to play around with and experiment with stuff that you could then pull over to the main game. But
Cam, you seemed to watch videos very quickly on to learn how to optimize your time in the game, which, as someone who had played the game for a while, I appreciated because then it meant you didn't need to be explained that like in order to see a rock you have to look on the ground and find the thing that looks like a rock. There's no other secret to it. It has to like, does it look like a rock?
So that's
just kind of how that's just kind of how I play games. Like I said, I'll restart things to do the most optimum strategy. So instead of doing that, because I couldn't, because we're playing a multiplayer game, I had my single player experience first, so I already knew what would be better, and I was just like, come on, Kenny, let's go do this. Me and Walker and Kenny, and we just thrived.
Yeah.
I think
never died.
There's a part in games like that
not
once. Nice. Well, I'm proud of you.
During the horde.
At least one person. I think there's a part in these games where this is just me, but I definitely feel the pressure, or I definitely feel a little pushed to not look into every secret for a game so open-ended in the beginning. Like, I really love seeing what the game will teach me off the bat, what I can learn from just experiencing the world and not looking things up. And I think a game like 7 Days to Die, you kind of do want to know how to start, you know, and there are a lot of games like that, like Path of Exile. You want to know how to start the game, because then you could spend hours on something that you feel like was incredibly ineffective, like a huge fucking base.
I think in this case, I did it because it's an alpha, and so they're still changing core gameplay.
An alpha from 2013. Should we like?
I appreciate that they're still alpha because they are changing core gameplay mechanics, like still doing that.
I would just expect after 7-ish years that they would have at least gone into a beta stage at this point. But
like they completely revamped the skill tree and they're adding more things, and they changed the mechanics of zombies constantly.
Oh yeah.
So that's like the only reason I knew, like, they'll go for the fastest route, but that isn't necessarily like they used to just spawn all around and just come at you straight lined. It didn't matter what the fastest route was. They just beat through a wall. But they changed it based on how the community basically cheesed that. To always just go like, oh, this is the fastest route now. But that makes it predictable, which is good. But, you know, I guess it makes it kind of hard too.
But it
That's
also,
why I
like,
want to know.
The fastest route wasn't always the most direct route that, like, was obvious to the human eye. Like, when we were in a bunker, the fastest route was collapsing the base above our heads.
Yep. Instead of beating down through the iron doors.
Yeah. Or like, I remember when you were in creative the one time, eventually they were just like, yeah, the stairs are not the fastest route to this person. We're going to just knock the one pillar that, like, the one stilt that he's on, we're just going to knock that down and he'll just fall down to us.
Right.
And it's like really cool that they got AI that can adapt to those types of things.
Yeah. So if they were like super dumb, and I mean, they're predictable still. I just wish if they were dumb, it probably wouldn't have cared to look up videos on different strategies, because those videos also are already outdated.
Yeah,
because of how they change things.
Yeah, I was really interested by that each alpha version could have its own set of, like, community videos made for it, and every single update, you basically tell the last set of videos, like a video about 7 Days to Die from 2018 is not really relevant anymore. If you look at these videos, you see that the interface has completely changed, and it's just like, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I think I want to say it's a good thing, because that means that your game allows itself to constantly have new content. So if you are looking for something about 7 Days to Die from 2018 and it feels out of date, you could feel inclined yourself as a content creator to create that, and it would get views because there's no other videos like it.
Right.
So,
and I think I really loved their approach of, like, oh, well, we're just not going to release the game in its entirety until, like, it's an actual full game, and we're still, like, deciding and taking risks on what we want to do. I remember when the game was, oh, you're mining with an axe, like, that's its own experience pool. Like, doing that thing gets you experience towards that thing. And so it was like you didn't level up. Like, you leveled up Miner 69er, but then, like, you had this base level of something else that, like, you could only use those points in certain ways. I can't fully remember it because it was so many. It was several versions ago. It was several years ago.
I think it was less that. Oh, you're talking about an old version of it. Yeah.
Yeah, where like it was before it was literally like what you did was tied to a skill that was leveling up.
Right.
Think like Oblivion, how like, you just run and you upgrade your athletic skill.
Right, like as you jump, your athletics increases the more frequently that you jump. But in this, it was like, oh, the more frequently that you're mining, the more your mining skill increases. And that was how you got better mining gear, which in some ways I liked better. And in other ways, I was like, oh, it makes so much more sense that you have a single experience pool and now you can build your tree out. Would have looked nice if it looked kind of like a skill tree instead of just like a list. But
so why did we stop? It broke our computers.
yeah, I was about to say, I think that the other two hosts are much more equipped to tell us why we stopped this game.
It blue screened Cam twice in one night, and then less than a week later, it blue screened me, and now my GPU doesn't work. So, and Dave's theory, well, that makes sense to me, is maybe it was the custom seed. That was a pretty huge fucking game. It
was a huge game with significant things that aren't in the base game.
Yeah. So maybe it was like Narnia, the seed that we played on. The point of it was that every single base had too much hidden inside of it, and you could just explore every single house almost infinitely. But maybe that was just too much of a load on my graphics card, which, was serving as the server for the game, and we were pretty spread out. So
you were streaming it at times.
And I was streaming it at times, and I was streaming to Discord, and I have my camera on, so it makes sense, but it does kind of suck. And it sort of led us to, looking at other survival games, because we had so much fun with that in a lot of moments that we didn't want to lose that momentum. And
I also think that it was developed in Unity, which is not known for being the most optimized development platform.
I didn't end up
games I've played
at talking to anybody about it, though, like from the Fun Pimps. I don't know if we knew that this issue was a little bit documented online of it bricking people's computers, and I guess
I think it's like a super rare thing and just coincidentally happened to both of us.
Yeah, I think it's not the most common thing, but also probably from their perspective, it's it's an alpha game. We've told you a million times it's an alpha game. It's not optimized for any computer setup. These are the minimal settings. These are the optimal settings, but those will change the next time that we pop in a significant alpha update. So, it is what it is. It sucks. It really, really sucks, especially in your position now of needing a GPU.
Which I was lucky that I got that GPU for super cheap from a friend, but still, I built this computer in October and now I can't touch it.
Yeah, and you were almost luckier because you almost got a better GPU for even cheaper.
Let's not talk about it. So it leads us to kind of what are we looking for? This kind of pulls back to where we're at outside of this podcast. Is the Discord is pretty big. We have a lot of channels, and right now we have a game section. And in that game section, we started off with a voice and text channel for 7 Days to Die, but it's now become a voice and text channel for survival games. One of the ones that we played afterwards was, I didn't get to play much of the in-betweens because of my computer, but I know that we tried a little bit of Ark as a group. We tried a little bit of...
Very barely have we tried Ark, though.
Yeah, very barely. I think only 2 people,
much of a chance.
3 people went
Max and
into it.
Kenny played it together. Walker keeps trying to push people to play it.
So let's say...
I think he's stoked.
One thing per host that you want out of the next survival game that gets us all to play together. Cam, start.
What game I want?
One thing inside of the game.
Exactly. What do you want from...
out of the experience.
Exactly.
Oh.
Because I feel like at this point, you're less inclined to play another survival game with 4 or 5 people and more just I could do my own thing.
Well, I like doing that in the group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yes.
It's more fun to do that in a group, even if I'm still doing my own thing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. So yeah, 7 Days to Die is not a game we're going to really play too much together anymore. What would be something that you see in a game for sure? No, yeah, for now. But
I think The Forest would be a good game.
Okay.
It's very similar in ways. I know you mentioned Green Hell. That's more survival based, but The Forest is more building based. And I think that's what people liked about 7 Days to Die. The mechanics in 7 Days to Die, where things would collapse based on structural integrity, was super cool, and I don't know if that's in the forest. It definitely, I don't think it is at all. But
Yeah,
the building
that's
mechanic
not
would be
common.
in there.
Mm-hmm. So
I think that's something that people would like.
the building mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like the physical, what's the word? Just the reality of it, that the structural integrity, that is something that you can use common sense to figure out, and it isn't just like, I'm gonna build one stack and everything on top of it will be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave.
For me, I think that it's super important that it's not the same experience for everyone. I think 7 Days did that well. Like you said, how Kyle was the miner and Max was the engineer and you were the chef and I ended up being the hunter, which I enjoyed doing, but we ended up not needing much of a use for it after very early game. And I wonder if we would have needed more use for it late game, or if we would have just been so overstocked with resources that like those skills ended up being useless. But a game like that where like you do have like people who are focused like more conceptually on building a base that is there to keep you alive and surviving, and then you've also got the people over here that are more conceptually focused on like, well, we need to also worry about the survival elements, not just the crafting and building elements, because both of them together is what creates that survival experience. And when it's not all on one person, that could be both frustrating and fun. I think that's where my frustrations came from, but also when we had the most fun was like when we were all kind of doing our own thing that we like pieced together at the end to create a whole.
Yeah, and which is why I think it's kind of a little bit like D&D. But
yeah,
so I totally agree with both of you guys. I would have said those two things for sure. So my other thing would be the gimmick. Is what is it that sets this world apart from 7 Days? Like 7 Days was zombie apocalypse. Grounded, which is the game that we're playing right now, is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids survival game. So I think that's something really cool for me in this game is that you move through the weeds and you find a Game Boy. And it's like, whoa, that's a whole fucking Game Boy. Or the fact that we started in this pit and then it didn't click for hours until I realized that was a footprint and stuff like that. Like what? Like, whoa! Oh my god! I'm standing in a footprint. Like, or seeing the crow on the fence, knowing that's not going to attack us now. But if we get powerful enough, we'll have to deal with that crow. And you can already break down its leaves. So the gimmick to me is really exciting, just because, like I said, I don't care that much. I don't care that much about the look of it being super realistic and it feeling like this is a real survival game and you are really in the real world. It's like, no, I'd rather a gimmick.
And I think that the playing with perspective, the way that shrinking down humans does, is just so unique. I think Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was like a pretty good movie at the time, just for like watching the like what would happen if like all of a sudden you were face to face with an ant that was as large as you, or rather you were as large as the ant. You can't run into a shelter and hide. You have no more shelter. And Grounded takes that concept and puts it into a video game where you're controlling the characters. Like, what would you, as someone who's afraid of spiders, do if you saw a fucking spider that's twice your size?
God,
Like,
I thought I was over my
so
arachnophobia. I'm not.
yeah,
so that's fun.
I love that concept of it. That's such a good that is a good gimmick.
Yeah.
I think, and that's what Kenny wanted with Ark. He was like, the reason I was so not into 7 Days is because of like the zombie aspect of it. If you had said like we're gonna survive with fucking dinosaurs, like I would have been all in right away.
Yeah.
I think the problem we're finding is that trying to play on Game Pass, though we have all the content, we don't have the freedom of like the server hosting and stuff that 7 Days gave us, which has caused a couple issues with us just getting started.
True. Cool. Well, I really appreciate that, guys. I think this was a really great review of 7 Days and survival games. And if like I mean, I think we talked good.
We definitely talked. We didn't give
I
like
think
a
consensus
final
was it
impression
was
of 7
it was
days.
good. I think it was more about our experiences with it than a
Yeah.
review.
True. Well, we're reviewing
Yeah.
our experience, right?
Yeah.
What?
I would give 7
Yeah.
days a solid arbitrary number out of 10. No, I don't know. I would say that overall, I think it's a great game. We should definitely continue watching it and hoping that the Fun Pimps continue developing it. It's really cool what they've been able to do with the game, and I hope that one of these days it becomes like
Beta.
yeah,
At
a
least.
beta version of the game. Like at least, yeah. I mean, we're talking about a game that's so old.
I would rate it 7 out of 10 days. I really loved it, and I would have continued playing it if it weren't for breaking my GPU. I would have definitely given it a lot more hours, and I think, yeah, maybe the zombie gimmick was getting a little old, but that, like, there was so much more to do.
That, for me, the zombie gimmick just that was what gave you the haste of having to do something.
Yeah.
Like, I think.
Yeah, I think it was super important in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you just had infinite time to run around and survive and do whatever, you would get pretty bored of 7 days very quickly, I think.
Right. Cam?
I really liked it.
Number?
I hope. Oh,
Or
5.
5 out of 10?
I just said 5.
Oh.
Yeah, just give me a number.
Just give me a number. Yep.
All right.
Okay. Sure. Why not? And if you want to join us or talk to us more about, survival games, give us a suggestion of what to play next. We'll probably still play Grounded for a minute, but let's see what else we'll be interested in.
Grounded's weakness is that you can only have 4 players.
Yes,
and that's why
we
we're
need
still
something with
looking
6
for that
people, I
survival
think.
game. Minimum. 6 people. Yeah.
Oh, we had 7, yeah. We had 7 to 8 for 7 days.
And I think that if we got a game that like we were all interested in enough and like just constantly talked about, more people would end up checking it out.
For sure. So hopefully people check out some of the games we mentioned or check us out and want to talk to us more about it. So I guess that leads us into just the ending and about us. And we, do you guys want to tell me what's going on in your lives? What's happening? I guess I could start with, what is even happening with my life? Work's pretty general. I feel like I spend a lot of time on QWERTYcast, really. And just like, not keeping it afloat, but like helping drive the boat. I just really enjoy working on this community, on this podcast, and the content we're creating. But
I've been trying to give my personal life a little bit more attention recently, so I've been not super active on the QWERTYcast stuff. And I wanna strike that balance a little bit better, but I'm also looking for a job still, which is like should be number 1 on my priority list. It's kind of like number 2 or number 3. Just like positive mental health being the top thing, and then like trying to find a way to balance between spending time with Shona and spending time with you guys, and making sure that I eat healthier and like take breaks during the day to like exercise, even if it's just walking around the block a few times. Like, so that's what I've been doing a lot. I bought I don't know, this like thing that you use on your back.
Ooh.
And like to use
like
that
a
for your back
weird
and use
curve
like
with
these
2
nubs for
orange
your
balls
legs.
at the end.
Yeah, I don't have the name of it in front of me, but it's like just a thing to
it's like
put pressure on your back and like
Interesting.
get like a deep tissue type of self massage thing, as well as using it on your legs. Like this part, these 2 orange balls here would actually go in between your calf to massage the outsides of your leg to get rid of all of the excess. What's it called? The stuff that sits in your lactic acid out of your muscles.
Oh, I don't know too much about that. Maybe I'll ask you about it later.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm trying to I'm exiting the Navy. I'm re-rating to be a civilian, so that's cool. Thank God.
Yeah.
Was that too loud?
Why is the Navy listening?
The president? Is the president going to know?
Daddy Biden emails you immediately. Hey, what the fuck?
Like, oh, thanks for listening. Yeah, so I'm trying to find a job right now. And I'm not worried yet, but the deadline will slowly approach, and that's when the anxiety will kick in.
So when you say the deadline will approach, is that like the deadline of like you're a civilian now and you just got to fucking figure it out? Like we're not giving you any support anymore? Deadline?
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
Okay.
Is it,
I have,
how different
go
would
ahead.
it be if you were 20 years in the service versus like how many years you've put in?
You get a pension.
Oh, right. No
And
shit.
you'd be paid for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My
But
cousin worked.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Fair.
My cousin worked in the military for a bit. And he was stationed in Germany, and got to travel around a lot. He got married right before getting stationed overseas, so that his wife could join him. She got to continue her studies while she was living overseas for years, and now they're settled down in the U.S. again. I don't know if he's still with the military. I don't know what kind of offices they have in Texas for that stuff, but I guess they probably had that same adjustment period. I've talked to him a little bit recently about like my move from Los Angeles to Oklahoma, and how like that was just such a jarring thing. It's like, yeah, how do you think it was moving from Germany to Texas?
Yeah, like they'll pay for you to go to your state of origin, like where you, I guess, signed.
Okay.
But you have to apply for that, and trust me, they don't care if you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
They've got enough things to think about.
It's more like they want to just keep you in.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
It's like almost harder to get out than just stay in.
Right.
Like a cult.
I won't say.
I still have not, and this is not like a point of pride really, but I still have not had too much of a huge dramatic shift in my like life in terms of like where I live. And like when I moved to Philly for college, that was just standard, you know, like moving for college is it can be easy, and like everyone's there at the same time new, so it was easy to adapt. But since then, I haven't moved to a new city. I haven't made a huge change in my life like that, and I really, it's coming. It's gonna happen, and I'm terrified of it, but I don't want to be. You know, I just like, I'm terrified of just the bad things that could happen, but I know that there are going to be a lot more like good things that come out of it. I guess my biggest fear is moving somewhere where I just have to like spend the first year making new friends, and that like just sounds exhausting to me, but it's still fun, you know.
I skipped that by never making friends.
I
That's how I do
can't
it.
be like that. It's just not me, and I have to have a community. Even if I kept the Discord community like alive and stuff, like I would need physical people that I can go see and hang out with. I would need people that I want to go to a bar with. Like that's why I know it would be an uphill battle for me.
I guess fortunately, like I don't have that option too much right now. Like nobody does, you know, right?
Right,
At least
right,
nobody in
that's
the
fair.
U.S.
Yeah.
Like you don't just go to bars right now.
Yeah.
It was tougher in LA because, you know, I was working on a long distance relationship, which clearly worked out. And Max and I were leading very different lives, and he was my only friend. I would try to stay late at the office, and there was a bar in the lobby, and I would go downstairs and drink, but like trying to shoehorn myself into a conversation with people who have known each other for the past year and a half, past 5, 10, 15 years in some cases. You're like, oh, you know, like I'm not going to fit into this conversation.
Right.
And then like I found that I didn't have a whole lot in common with the people that I worked with where I worked, which super sucked. To not find like anybody else interested in video games. You're like, how is it that all of you are only interested in sports and music? And that's where it ends. Like every now and then you're like, oh, Game of Thrones is a thing. And you're like, it sure is.
Yeah.
So that was tough for me in Los Angeles, but since moving to Oklahoma, I haven't really felt too pressured to make friends.
Right.
One, because of the Discord community, but two, because like, where am I gonna go? Out to the bar, and then I'm gonna come home and like die? I don't know. Like,
yeah, I feel that. Yeah, we hopefully, I don't know how long it's gonna take for most cities to go back to like a regular bar hanging out sort of deal, but who knows?
Shona was wondering how much of that would actually even, like, how much of that culture would even come back. Like,
right.
Are people going to be super anxious to, like, are as many people going to be super anxious to go to a bar and buy a beer for $9 when you could buy a 6-pack for $12 and hang out at home with a group of friends?
I mean, we know for a fact that people didn't stop partying together. They just couldn't do it in bars, like, and clubs. But people are still partying in mass in groups, whether or not they are getting sick. But yeah, the group.
But so are they going to go back to bars?
Right, exactly, like a closed space. Are they going to go back? Is it going to happen with masks? I feel like everyone I talk to who exercises with masks hates it. Everyone who like has to wear a mask for a prolonged period of time and not sweat hates it. So will that even work?
They're gonna go back to bars. They already do here.
Yeah, I know it's gonna happen. People just won't care.
Here, but
also, once you have the vaccination and you have like this little card that says I'm clear, what are you gonna care? And yes, whether or not it's actually
really gonna be like that. Like,
yes,
I guess my thing is I think in the U.S. very briefly it might get back to that. But I think that very quickly after that, it'll be like, and this is the vaccination that doesn't work for the other strains of this deadly virus. And that it's going to be the same thing where, like, as soon as X amount of people die from a different strain of it or whatever, because I think this vaccination is, for lack of better words, a crock of shit. Would I get it? Yeah, likely. But, like, do I believe that it's actually going to, in the long run, help us in any way? Not really. It's too quickly developed. There's not enough research done on it for as much as we can do in a short amount of time now. That, I mean, I think the flu vaccine isn't even a good vaccine. Like it's an okay.
I would say that this vaccine's a little different because the SARS is back in 2010. It's a very similar virus to what COVID-19 is, so they already had like a way to develop it, and plus just the pure like we need this now.
Right.
Just kind of really helped get it out there. But so I think it's going to be fine.
Then there's already people that are doing shit to fuck it up. Like, yeah, okay, we have a way to develop it. It's just like, it's got these benefits to it. But then you've got people who, like the story in Philadelphia, if you haven't heard of the, like, relatively, like, a grad student who then was in charge of, and, like, distributed to his friends. Well, it's a two issue vaccine. Like, there's two separate times they have to get it. So now his friends got the first one. What if they don't get the second one? What will that mean for when the virus can now have a host to adapt to this vaccine through? And then the same thing happened where, what was it, Washington State, where people were stuck in a snowstorm and like they didn't want the vaccine to go bad, so they just gave it. They went to people's cars and were like, "Hey, do you want the vaccine?" And people were like, "Yeah." And like you give them one dose of it, but they're never gonna get the second dose. They're not cleared to. So, not to mention the fact that it's already hard enough to keep enough of this vaccine coming for the people who are able to get it. And even those people, like my mom is qualified to get it in March, and she got her first appointment set. And then they were like, yeah, but like we can't set you for a second appointment. Like within a month after your first one, there's no availability for a second appointment. And it's like, then at what point in time is that even useful? Like you said, it has to be done at this time, and then 2 weeks later at this time, and you're like, but we personally can't execute that, so I don't know.
I don't fucking know.
that's where my concern comes
Yeah.
from. Is less from like, oh, it's not going to be effective. This is Bill Gates is going to track like none of that stuff. I don't believe. I think that's all nonsense. But like the thought of this vaccine might work if we could do anything effective with administering it and actually getting it to people when they need to get it, and expanding how many people can get it more rapidly.
It's definitely a conversation that we can keep fucking having. It's gonna keep. We're gonna keep talking about it for the whole year. But
listen, I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for March to roll around and all of a sudden the government found out that it actually knows how to like be productive and get something accomplished.
Yeah, it's not
but like, right. But like, I'm looking at not getting a license unless I wait outside of a DMV for 4 hours because I can't make an appointment until next year.
Right.
In a county that has less than 1 million people. A county, the whole county, not the city. So like for that, like that does not give me a high bar to expect anything to be different with this vaccination.
I am not going to counter argue that I have any faith in any of these systems. So let's close this podcast out with, on a great note, positivity abound. And we're just going to let people, like, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening to QWERTYcast. We hope that you enjoyed our discussion on survival games and just longevity in video games. Please recommend to us any games that you think that we should look into and do, like, even a deeper dive of that have been around for a while. There's so many games we didn't even mention. We almost brought up too many AAA and AA games, but there's hundreds of games in the indie sphere that could continue being played for years, and they're continuously being developed. Like, those games are coming out more and more now because people have been spending years playing with the tools that they want to, like, that they want to continue for years. Holy crap! I'm
Throw it
so
into our
bad at
indie
English.
game hype channel.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Indie
if
game
there's
hype.
an indie game with longevity that we really just did not discuss, that like you're gonna be mad that we didn't talk about it, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But tell us about it.
Comment
and then
somewhere.
We'll play it and then talk about it.
RimWorld, good game.
Oh,
Okay,
well, there you
just
go.
gonna say it.
We just need a list somewhere, centralized list. But okay, thank you for joining us, and we love you. QWERTYcast out.
This episode is brought to you by our Patreon subscribers, our QWERTYcast hosts, our audio engineer / musical master, Gary, and you, our listeners. If you would like to join our community, find us through QWERTYcast.com, which has links to all our platforms, including Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, Discord, and even more. On behalf of everyone here at QWERTYcast, thanks for listening. This is Dave saying QWERTYcast out.